Okay, so don't make it back on time.
That's just to remind you to sign up for the website. That's all. Guys, I've got a small Let's have a look at how leaders should lead. Execution. When you're leading, it's about building trust with your followers. If your followers don't trust you, then you really can't lead. And the most important word on that slide there is caring. Leaders need to care about their people. You can see in Bethlehem, the people that were running that company didn't care about their people, whereas in Ucore, the people themselves ran that company. So you've really got to care. As soon as you breach their trust, then you lose your followers. Managers, they're promoted to a position, leaders aren't. You have to earn it, you have to care. As I said, if leaders are in a position to lead, they can also enrich themselves and pay themselves a lot of money. As soon as you do that, you're destroying trust. You lose the people that are following you. So it's about caring for people and earning their respect. You need to have a vision. As I said before, leaders are very simple people. They think about one word and keep heading for that word, and they communicate it continually. You've got to have two-way communication. You've got to be aligned. There was a study done of about 23,000 employees. 30% had any clear understanding where their organisation was heading and what the direction or strategy was. 20% recognised the connection between what they did and where the organisation was heading. 55% of employees demonstrated apathy to the organisation's goals, and 19% were actively sabotaging them. Yeah? So in Australia, we're not doing a very good job of leading and communicating the vision. You've also got to be accountable and hold people accountable for their mistakes. Leaders tend to learn from their mistakes, yeah? So accountability is quite important. Don't blame it on the market. You've got to admit failure and be accountable for it. Successful leaders tend to share credit with their staff. Just as in Ucore, they shared their rewards with their staff. Successful leaders do that. If the organisation's underperforming, don't blame it on the market, as Bethlehem Steel did, blame it on imported foreign imports. You blame it on yourself. Yeah? And always praise in public and reprimand in private. Later on, if you become managers and are working with people, if you have to dress somebody down, you do that in private, behind closed doors. If you're praising somebody or rewarding them, do that in public and make sure everybody sees that. Has anybody got a bad boss that reprimands you in public? Yeah? Yeah. Does it make you feel good, or does it make him feel or her feel good by doing that?
No, not really. I don't think it's even good for, because I work in a bar.
Yeah.
It's not even good for business. Like, you've got your customers.
So the customers are in there while they're, oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this person's not a manager. Definitely not a leader anyway, that's for sure. Yeah, you'll always do that. And if I'm going to dress somebody down, usually what I'll do is I sit on the same side of the desk as them, and rather than tell them what their problem is, I'll ask them, what do you think the problem is? What happens then?
They're pretty truthful.
What?
They're pretty truthful.
They're pretty truthful. Usually what happens is they'll tell you a lot more, because they don't know what you know, a lot more than what you know already. So always ask them questions rather than telling them when you're dressing them down. Leaders are very focused. Again, one simple word, one simple direction, and stay committed to it. Managers tend to lack focus and they're jumping around. 1 month it's going to be a quality program, the next month they'll be focused on cost. Managers are all over the place. Leaders tend to be very simple and stay consistently on one direction towards their vision. You've got to align all your organisation structure, the culture, the systems, all in one direction. You've got to throw resources at achieving your vision, your competitive advantage. And alignment also means if you're flying, if you're in a cost-focused culture and you're trying to be very productive and very efficient, don't fly first class. You fly down the back with everybody else. So make sure that you're aligned. These CEOs that get appointed and they're turning around an organisation and cutting a lot of staff, and then they go and pay themselves this ridiculous amount of money. It breaches trust and they're out of alignment with their organisation. So people start not following them. Coaching. You'll probably be coached in your job. Coaching is different to mentoring. Coaching is done by your immediate supervisor, and they set you targets. Probably every 12 months you'll have a formal meeting with your immediate supervisor, and they'll work out what you need to do in your job, what your targets are, and how to help you. How's mentoring different to coaching? Has anybody been mentored in their organisation? Coach is your immediate supervisor. A mentor, if you get mentored in an organisation, it's usually from 1 or 2 levels above. And if I've got an organisation where I've identified a really good person and I want to hold them, I'll start a mentoring program rather than just coaching by the immediate supervisor. Mentoring usually gets you involved in other areas of the organisation. You start to join management meetings where there's an HR person or a finance person there, and it exposes you to other parts of the company. If ever you get on a mentoring program, that's because they've identified you as somebody that they want to really move up in the company and develop your career, and they'll get you involved in other things. It's a great way of holding high performance people in the company. So that's mentoring. And then you've got to delegate. You've got to delegate to people by empowering them, giving them authority, accountability, and also responsibility. And you as engineers will probably have all those as you move up in your career. And when you delegate and somebody makes a mistake, if you're a manager or a leader and somebody's made a mistake, how would you fix the mistake?
Allow them to fix it.
Allow them to fix it. So delegate the fix as well. Otherwise, they're never going to learn. So if they make a mistake, don't go in and solve the problem. Get them to do it and delegate that. And this is a rule. I haven't seen it in any books, but it was taught to me by a boss of mine when I was starting out. Delegate 120% of people's workload. And the reason is, when people are doing 120%, they can't possibly do their jobs. They forget about their working conditions, how poorly they're paid, and all the other things, and they're focused on just trying to deliver 120%. If you're in a government organisation, that drops to 80%. You start playing on the internet, you start thinking how poorly you're paid, and the organisation is quite unionised. So that was just a little trick that I've learned over the years. That's on execution. Okay. Let's have a look at integration.
Or too busy beating the crap out of terror suspects. That's true.
This is tying the organisation together and integrating with policies and procedures and measurement functions. I guess once you've got a culture in place, that's probably the best way of holding an organisation together. The structure separates it and starts compartmentalising it. Another way of doing it is to try to put in policies and procedures and rules to weld it together. If the policies and procedures and rules are too slack, then the organisation will never deliver the strategy. If they're too confining, then again the people won't be able to move and they won't be able to deliver the strategy. So you've got to get your integration mechanisms sorted out. So let's have a look at that. Recruitment is a great way of influencing the culture. Either get the right people on or get the wrong people out. Just the same as what you've got with your teams. You put a team together with your business plan. If the team's working well, you don't have to manage it. You just turn up, get the business plan done, and away you go. If you've got the wrong people on the team, no matter what you do, you're going to have to tightly manage them and keep asking them, have you delivered this, have you delivered that? They're the wrong people. Yeah? The best way to deal with that is get rid of them and get the right people into the organisation. So if you've got the wrong strategy and the right people, those people will work that out and fix the strategy. If I've got a great strategy and bad people, I know I'm in trouble. So you've always got to get the right people into your team. Again, people aren't the most important asset in an organisation. The right people are. And you've got to watch out for managers, because managers like to control things and they hire people that they can control. Leaders don't. Leaders hire people that are better than them and delegate the jobs. Managers, if they're A-grade managers, they might hire B-grade people who then hire C-grade people. So you've got to be careful about managers, and usually in an organisation you need to get involved in the recruitment process so that they're not hiring B-grade people or the wrong people. If you've hired somebody or if you've got somebody on your team and you're tightly managing them, they're wrong. You need to get rid of them. And if you don't get rid of them, it siphons all your energy away from the right people and you're not developing their careers. And also it's visible. If you don't get rid of them, it's visible to the right people and they start leaving anyway. It drives the right people away. So when you're getting hired and you're about to go and get recruited in a number of organisations, they're hiring you for two things. Can you do the job and will you do the job? Can's very easy to work out. I can read your resume and work out if you can do the job. Do you have the technical skills? And people usually hire for that. Do you have the skills? People will fire you for that. Have you got a bad attitude? Or people hire you for can and fire you for will. And so the attitudes need to be taken into account when hiring. So I can work out can just by looking at your resume. Have you got the relevant industry experience? For you, you probably don't have much in this experience. I'll work out, have you got the technological skills or know-how by looking at your resume. Later on in life, I'm looking at, have you got the contacts and networks? So instead of what you know, it's who you know later on in your job. So can be assessed by looking at your education, your work experience, your past performance. Out of those three, which are the ones that I tend to ignore? Out of those three there? Education. All education tells me is you're stuck at something for 4 or 5 years and been self-disciplined. That's the only relevance I read when I look at education. It's mainly your work experience and your past performance that I look at when hiring. Now, so that's can. Will is your motivation. And this is very important. That's why sometimes they do personality tests to try to profile you. First to see, are you an engineer? And they're also seeing what your motivation is. Are you going to be motivated in doing this job? So for you, when you're answering questions for recruiters, have a bloody good reason for that. Reason for moving positions. Yeah? They'll always ask you, why did you move from that job to that one? Don't ever answer that negatively. They cross you off the list. You just go straight into the bin. Always have a damn good reason for moving from one job to the next. And it's got to be about career advancement, or to broaden my skills this way, or to put me in touch with customers so I can learn about communication. That's extremely important because it assesses will. The other thing is check references. If I pick up the phone and ring up one of your references and they give me a 5-minute answer about you, I cross you off the list. If somebody thinks that you're fantastic, they'll be on that phone for half an hour at least. Yeah? So also make sure that you've got some pretty good references. And the personality tests also are assessing will you be able to do the job. When I'm hiring, just a little trick I do is I just want to see how motivated you are. And I hire technical people. I always make sure that the where I meet them and where the interview room is quite a long way down the corridor, and I walk fast to the interview room and then look around to see if you're still with me. If you're not, I cross you off the list. So make sure you walk fast to the interview. And you've got to get this right, because 1 in 4 workers have been with their current employers for less than a year. You tend to, particularly these Gen Ys, move around a lot. 1 in 2 workers have been with their current employers for less than 5. Baby boomers stay for 5 to 10. Gen Ys, they hop around. Yeah?
What happens if they ask you why you're walking so fast?
I just tell them I'm honest with them. I just want to see if you can keep up, basically. Yeah, but yeah. Just make it a joke, lighten it up. Otherwise, I feel like they're under pressure when you actually sit with them in the interview. Yeah. And today's students, by the age of 38, will have had about 12 jobs. So Gen Ys tend to hop around a lot. So that's why you've got to be very careful in recruiting. Let's go through that. Policies and procedures. Let's have a look at those. Policies and procedures are important to get in place in an organisation. If you've got a strong culture and it's self-disciplined and self-governed, then you don't need a lot of rules and policies and procedures. If you've got the wrong people in the company, then you need a lot of bureaucracy and policies and procedures to control it. If you've got a very flexible set of procedures, then all you have to do is make the procedures work. So you clean the tank rather than the fish themselves, rather than the people themselves. And entrepreneurs don't like a lot of policies or procedures or rules, but what these things do is they standardise the mundane tasks of the company, and they actually liberate creativity and risk taking in a company if you apply them. And the reason you put in these rules is not to govern the right people. They'll do the job anyway. It's usually to govern the wrong people. And the more rules you put in, it drives the right people away and more wrong people into the company. So they tend to implode. Now, measurement, we have to measure everything and pay for performance. You put in good measurement systems, and right through the business plan, I put KPI fields all the way through. Key performance indicators. It's measuring your input, and your input could be people or materials or sourcing, any sort of things. You've got to measure your conversion in operations and marketing, and then your output. It's basically what your customers are saying about the business. So that's why KPIs are right through the business plan, because you've got to measure these things. And also, all the different departments could be heading in different directions. For instance, marketing might be a mid-term key performance indicator. R&D is very long-term. Operations is very short-term. But you need them to go in the right direction, the same directions. And rewards. Does money motivate people, you think?
Yes.
Yeah, everyone say yes? Yeah. So, if you've got a team doing your business plan, and you've got the wrong person on the team, if you throw a bit more money at them, would they be better?
No.
They might be better? No? Who's got the wrong person on their team? And throw more money at them? No? It's not going to work. I tend to agree. You use the money to get the right people there in the first place. So you use money to recruit those people. But if they're the right person, they're going to do the good job anyway. Yeah. So use the money to get the people there in the first place. If you've got the wrong person, it doesn't matter if you dump a tip truck of money on them, they're still going to be the wrong person. So money tends not to drive a positive response from a person. You've got to get enough there to get the right person there in the first place. But it tends not to reward the person. And you've got to reward also based on the competitive advantage. So figure out what the organisation wants to be good at and then reward them. If you looked at Ucore, it was always about productivity and low cost and efficiency. And they rewarded that efficiency and productivity there with their incentive scheme. So that's what you should be trying to reward. Right. So let's have a look at organisational change. Now, you can change an organisation by evolution or revolution. What's revolution? Changing an organisation.
Killing everyone and starting.
Sorry?
Getting rid of everyone and starting again.
Absolutely, that's revolution. So you can change an organisation overnight by just sacking them all and recruiting a whole new workforce. Or you could do it by evolution, which is what most companies do, by resetting the strategy, the culture, the measurement systems, the incentive systems, the feedback systems. You know, for these large organisations like IBM or the Commonwealth Bank, trying to turn them around is like trying to turn the Titanic around. It's very difficult. If you've got a small organisation, an entrepreneurial organisation, you can whip that around very quickly. So to do a large organisation, you need a massive force to try to get them to change, because at the top of these organisations there's all this middle management that's going to resist turning the organisation around. So let's have a look at evolutionary change. This is where most successful companies do that. They keep listening to the market, keep finding out what their customers want and responding to it. So they're tuning their culture all the time and evolutionarily changing it. They change their structures, their systems, all their skills. They're continually re-engineering it. So if you looked at, what they're doing is they're working on all of these and changing all of these. Rather than sacking everybody and recruiting new people, they're working on all of these elements to change it. If you look at organisations that do it by revolution, they get to a certain point in the organisation where they realise the market's dying. We need to go and spawn new markets. We need to develop things. We need to change the culture. Do managers like that? They're risk averse, so managers are going to resist that. So what you've got to do is you've got to paint a sense of urgency. You've got to say, right, our profits are money, we're going to losses. Some competitors in the market, maybe a patent's expired. You've got to make the
present situation much more high risk than the future situation. Drive them out of their comfort zones. Because managers are paralysed by change and they don't want to change. They're thinking about risk and they're trying to minimise the risk. And taking somebody into the unknown is very difficult. So you've got to create a long-term vision and communicate it ruthlessly. Walk around, talk about the new direction, and get the managers to adopt that. You've got to go from peacetime mode into wartime mode and keep communicating to the organisation. If we don't change, we're going to die. I guess let's have a look at that. So what we're doing is we're painting a new coat of paint on the people. We're getting rid of the people that are in the old culture and we're putting in a new culture. We're promoting those that have adopted the new way or the new direction. We're rewarding them and we're trying to remove the old ones. So that's what we should be doing here. So let's have a look at Philips. When that guy came in from Philips, what he did was there was a new leader appointed, Jan Timmer. He worked on the measurement system and started rewarding people that changed and adopted the new culture. They paid for good performance. He also ruthlessly communicated this at all the conferences, what the new direction was. He removed the old people, they jumped ship, and he recruited the new people. So that was done by revolution. He changed that organisation. So let's have a look at a change case study. This is one of mine. What's that bit there? What's that? UK? This is a shipping case study. Back in 96, I think it was, or 95. What's that? That's France. Germany. Netherlands. Belgium. Okay, right. So we know the geography. And what I'm going to do is just blow up that part of the picture. Yeah. So this was a shipping business running from Ramsgate through to Ostend. Ostend is east end of Belgium. So it was a shipping business running from the south east of the UK across to Belgium. Where do most of the ships run? In between England and the continent. From Dover to Calais. That's where most of the ships run because it's the shortest route across there. That's what was running on this route here from Ramsgate to Belgium. Ostend Lines was a Belgian government organisation. That's the Prince Philippe. It's quite a large ship that carried a lot of cars. They're the blue ships. They had 3 of those. There's the White Cliffs of Dover, by the way. The White Cliffs are down there on the southeast of England. And they had about the capacity for 1,900 passengers and about 240 cars. So it's quite a large ship, principally. And they had another 2 that were smaller than that, but they still carried a lot of passengers and cars. Also running on that route were 2 red ships operated by a UK company called Sally Line. These were smaller ships. They carried cars and passengers, but they were much older and they were quite slow. So if you look at the geography of the southeast of England, there's Dover there, Ramsgate's there. That's about a 30-minute drive by car between Ramsgate and Dover, and Folkestone's here, which is a little bit. That's about a 5 to 10 minute drive from Dover to Folkestone. Yeah. So that's just on the geography. Now, Dover was the main seaport of the UK, and they had a bunch of competitors operating here. There was Sea France, Hoverspeed, Stena, P&O, and they were all running out of Dover. They had about 70 odd sailings or 70 odd ships going to and fro each day, and the port of Ramsgate, they had those 5 ships, the 2 red ones and the 3 blue ones. That's about 5 or 6 sailings a day. And usually what you do is you get on at, say, Ramsgate in the UK, and you go overnight and land in Belgium in the morning and then drive off. And it was a good little route to go out to the north of the continent, meaning up to Germany or up to the Netherlands. So you saved a bit of time that way. So that's the port of Dover there. And the awareness amongst the people in the UK back in about 95, I think it was, or 96, most people knew about Dover, 76%, and very few people knew about Ramsgate. Only 11% was aware. And the people that knew about Ramsgate were up here in Kent, or Thanet, they called it. It was mainly the local people that knew about Ramsgate. Very few people knew that. Now, Folkestone, what was going out of Folkestone? Anybody been there to this part of the UK? What was going out of Folkestone? They've got about 35, 37 crossings a day. You know what that was? Anybody been there? No? Out of Folkestone was a fixed link. It's called the Channel Tunnel. So just about 5 to 10 minutes from Dover, there was a tunnel that went through to Calais. When the Channel Tunnel opened, it opened in 94 about, and it picked up about 25% of the business, mainly from Dover. The ships lost about 20% of the business, but then the ships started heavily discounting to pick the business back up again. So the tunnel captured about 25% share of market over 2 years, and then the ships started discounting to start winning business back. How's Ramsgate going in all of this?
Down.
Real bad.
Yeah, down. Our objective was, when we had a look at this business, we saw the 5 ships and we wondered, can we save the Ramsgate route? Because the route to Belgium it had a competitive advantage, whereas if you're going to the north of Europe, it was quite good. Anyway, Folkestone was good. There's Folkestone there. The Eurostar ran through here. You used to get on at Waterloo Station, which was just near Buckingham Palace in London. So it was Waterloo, but they straightened out all of the tracks and moved it to Pancras and Pancras. So that's just there. So you could get on the Eurostar at London, and usually it went non-stop. If it was a car train, you could also board it at Ashford if it stopped there, or at Folkestone. You used to drive onto the train. It was a double-decker train. You could drive onto the car deck down below or onto the car deck above. They had 2 car decks on the train. It would travel at about 330 kilometres, about 333 I think it is. So it really moved. In London, it was only limited to about 70 miles per hour. Once you hit the Channel Tunnel, it would go across the tunnel at 160k, and then it would wind up to 330, and you knew you were going fast because sometimes the train would line up with the motorways in France, and you knew the Mercs and the Beamers were up around 220k, and you just go like that straight by them. So it was really travelling. But what they did was they straightened out all the tracks on the UK side over the last 10 years, and now it's 330k pretty much all the way except for when you hit the tunnel, and it slows down to half the speed. So that's what the inside of the tunnel looks like. You drive onto the vehicle deck if you're boarding at Folkestone. You'll either drive onto the top deck of the train or the bottom deck, and the airlocks come down and seal you in, and then you go across. It's about a 30-minute trip in the tunnel with a car. So what we had a look at doing was taking 3 of those big blue ships and 2 of the red ships out of the route and replacing these slow ships. So they travelled at about 10 or 13 knots with 2 fast catamarans. Now, there was a sense of urgency here because those 5 ships combined were doing about 210 million in revenue and losing 150 million. Was that a sense of urgency? Yeah, absolutely. So remember I said either a declining profit margin or a strong competitor. What's a strong competitor? The tunnel, yeah. So you've got to force these people into thinking, hey, we need to change, and that was it. So what we did was we took 5 of those ships off the route and put in 2 catamarans. So we displaced those 5 with 2. Does anybody want to see what the catamaran looked like? Yeah, here it is. I mean, I could actually make love to that boat. It was so good. But anyway, it could carry, and if you think that's small, you could turn a car around in the nose. That could take 180 cars and about 700 passengers. And that travelled at about 38 knots, so it really shifted in the water. And what I also suggested is let's put these 2 boats in. We brought them up from New Zealand. We had them placed in New Zealand. Brought them up from New Zealand, and we wanted to move it, instead of it landing in Ramsgate, move the port down to Dover. So we berthed down at Dover. That was the suggestion, and that would turn the company around. Anyway, when we went over to Belgium, we had a look at Ostend Lines, and they had 1,800 staff and a very large human resources department. Because they had so many staff, they also needed an HR department. And they had a very relaxed, people-based culture. And in fact, see that was their communication system. These corridors of boxes, mailboxes, that was their email system, if you like. And they tried to, we did some asset stripping, and we had to figure out what in the port that we wanted to keep if we're putting these 2 catamarans in. And we certainly didn't buy their message system. And the traffic lights, out of each of the manager's offices, they had these traffic lights. And red means you can't knock on the manager's door. Amber said you'd knock before entering. I forget what green meant, but yeah, it was very bureaucratic. It was an old government organisation, very much a people-based culture. Sally in the UK employed 255 staff. Again, a people-based culture. They had a bit of a tugboat image in the marketplace. So we had to transform 2 people-based cultures to a different culture. What we did was we had to take out 5 10-knot ships and put in 2 38 catamarans and transform a very slow traditional service to a very fast service, fast turnaround, fast route, fast ferries, and fast food too. We redesigned their restaurants. All the restaurants on board these slow ships were white linen tablecloth, traditional dining restaurants. We had to go and transform all of that. We had to, in 5 months, there was 4 of us that got put into this route to go and change it. We had to go and rebuild duty-free stores, rebuild bond stores to house the duty-free goods. And there was a sense of urgency because we had to meet the peak summer season. We had to get those 2 vessels into service. Otherwise we would have lost too much revenue. How fast were we? I had the task of getting a duty-free licence to land in Belgium. And the Belgian people wanted me to present this special form, this special licence form, and we were operating also in France. But we hadn't seen this special form, and we kept asking the Belgian government, what does it look like? And they couldn't figure out what it was like, and it was really slowing us up, and I just got sick of it. I remember in our London office, this guy walked in, he just got this new golf membership, this membership to this golf club, and it really looked like a nice sort of membership. And what we did was we colour photocopied it. We had to take it down to a quick, one of these colour photocopying places. We whited out all of the words and put in these special words about duty-free licence, and presented the Belgian government with this duty-free form, and they ticked the box and let us have the licence, which was really good. Anyway, so you had to do everything really fast. You had to be a change, and we had 4 people working 20 hours a day. We slept there in the office. We just had to go and meet the target of getting the business revamped within 5 months. We had to build new duty-free stores, and that's where I learned a little bit about retail and getting your lighting right and getting your shelf space and displays right. We had to go and put in bond stores because we were selling mainly alcohol and cigarettes in our duty-free stores, and we had to put in special bond stores. We had to put in special restaurants in the port, rip out all the old restaurants and put in the fast food restaurants. We had to get the car parking or the marshalling right to make sure that the traffic flowed onto the ferries in an orderly manner. We had to build check-in booths because people not only checked in at the port, but they also checked in through their cars, so we had to build those. We had to get in engineers to put in link spans, which is the bridge from the port side through to the ferry, so the cars drove over it, so we had to build those. We got bunkering, which was special marine diesel for these catamarans. Had to find the source of that and bring that in. That was the hardest thing, finding people that could weld aluminium, because the catamarans were made out of aluminium, and you can't just simply weld them because you'll burn the catamaran. So we had to go and bring those people out from Tasmania, from New Zealand. We had to train the people how to drive these things, because at 38 knots, you've got to know what you're doing, otherwise you stack them, and they stack the few. Yeah, that's a picture from inside. We had to go and relay out the inside and get everything sorted out. So when you learn project management, I've used project management a few times in my life. This was one of the times where we had to get everything coordinated within 5 months to meet that summer deadline. So what we had to do is take 2 companies with very much a people-based culture and very slow, and do that. Turn it into a very fast, task-based culture. And what this is all about is everything was fast. Fast turnaround, fast speed, fast restaurants, everything was fast. So we had to recruit people that were going to be oriented to being fast. Now, we had criminals that got on board. They were called the runners. In Belgium, they had a tax break on tobacco, rolling tobacco. And so what would happen is these people from Liverpool up in the north of England would come down and sit on our boat and run across the English Channel, go and fill up bags. You can take enough rolling tobacco back to the UK for personal use. So they go and fill up these black Adidas sports bags like that with rolling tobacco and come back to the vessel and get on board and ride across. And they were criminals. Yeah. But we even taught them to be fast because what would happen is because our turnaround is speeded up, they'd have to run to their tobacco place, fill up the bags, and then run back. And we made it a game. We got faster and faster. So the tobacco shop would just swap the bags, and then they'd run back. And then the tobacco shop would actually move and put in a little sort of temporary, like caravan tobacco shop near our port, because they got faster. But anyway, we took them really fast too. And we flagged the vessel. That's a Luxembourg flag. That's our company's structure, and I haven't got time to talk to you about organisational ownership and structuring. But you can see it's quite a complex structure. The vessels were flagged under the Luxembourg flag. Does anybody know anything about Europe, where Luxembourg is? How much, can you see Luxembourg there on the map? Yeah. How much coastline has Luxembourg got? Zero. But the reason we put it under a Luxembourg flag was that dictates what crew you can have on a vessel. So if you see a vessel with an Australian flag on it, that means it's got Australian crew on it. Now, the reason we put a Luxembourg flag on it meant that we could go in international waters and pay these people. We'd still pay them what they needed to be paid, but we didn't have to pay all of the taxes and all of the other issues all of the other things that the governments demand. So we could put Belgian crew on here, but in order to employ a Belgian seafarer, you'd pay them their salary, and then for workers' comp and all the other taxes that the Belgian government would put on, it would be another 100% of their salary. You know how Greece is going broke? It's because of these things, their social security system and everything. You have to pay virtually twice the salary to employ somebody. So same with France, same with most of these countries in the continent. That was the problem. So that's why we flagged the vessel under a Luxembourg flag. I mean, we washed the money through Madeira. What's Madeira?
Portugal.
Sorry?
Portugal.
It's an island off the coast of Portugal, famous for port wine, cakes, Madeira cakes, and a tax haven. We washed it back through Singapore and then to the UK and then back to Australia, and through one of the Channel Islands, Jersey, to get the money back to Australia, all to avoid paying tax. But anyway, so the Belgian crew, we reduced that from 1,300. How many do you think we got it down to? 100? No, not quite. 270. Yeah. The Belgian port staff, how do you think we got it down to? From 500 to? 10? Not quite. 55. Yeah. And on the UK side, we got them down to 130 because they were the marketing people and finance people. So we reduced that. Now, 4 of us did this, and you know when I talk about what are we assessing? Can you do the job? Will you do the job? We had to do, let's just have a look at that. We had to do about 1,300 people in the space of a few months, and we shared it. And it was like a production line. We come in and interview them very quickly, and as I'm interviewing them, I'm drawing whether they're a task-based person or a people-based person, and very quickly doing this. And my girlfriend came to stay with me, and she said, she stayed for a few months while we were in the UK. She said, how come we change hotels every night? It's because we all had death threats. I had knives pulled on me, all sorts of things during this process. So I always talk about building companies and companies starting from something, but when you deal with a company where you're trying to transform it, this is a pretty bad situation to be in. And if you have to go and sack people, you've got to actually go and do it yourself and face them. And it's a pretty hard thing. So if you come up with excuses about how I can't get my business plan in on time or assignment, just have a think about what I've done in life and have a think about the excuses that I've had pulled on you. I wouldn't recommend pulling a knife or anything like that. So what we did was we recruited a very fast culture. So we transformed, yeah, go on. Sorry?
How long did it take you to fire that much people?
Well, we did the whole thing in about 3 months. It was horrendous, honestly. And to see that many people and decide, yes, you're employed, you're not, you're playing with people's lives. It's a horrible thing to do. Anyway, while we were doing this, Sally, the red ship company, owned the port of Ramsgate, and they didn't want to lose the port fees. So I'd gone and done that New York business, that New York ferry business while this happened. Sally managed to negotiate, instead of us landing in Dover, they wanted us to move to Ramsgate and stay landing in Ramsgate. And unfortunately, while I was in New York, they said, right, let's go and land in Ramsgate. So that was one of the problems. So we got the fast culture right, and we did that by removal and recruitment. So we were doing it by revolution. So we did all of those things very fast, putting new procedures, new measurement systems, new reward systems, and we kept communicating it. We were walking around doing it. Now, what happened was we started on time, but the revenue went from 210 million to 180 million. The losses were reduced from 150 million to 25 million. How was that? Better, but not good, because we still burnt 25 million. The devil's in the details, because one of the things I forgot to measure was the bus height. On the Ramsgate route, there were a lot of tourist buses that came in, and they fitted on those big ferries, and the clearance on the catamarans was a few mil too short. We couldn't get the buses on, so that's why we lost a little bit of the revenue. So the devil's in the detail. The other problem that we had was, what's that? That's an engine? What sort of engine? It certainly is a V8. Yep, that's a V8, and that produces about 300 kilowatts of power. Do you want to see what was in the catamarans? That's what's in the catamarans. Now that is a V20, okay, and it's turbocharged, and there are 4 of them. In those, there are there's 2 engine rooms on that side and 2 on the other side. And they produce 30,000 kilowatts of power. Yes, shit. And if you happen to be standing here without ear protection, when that's at 38 kilowatts of power, your eardrums just explode. It's as simple as that. Anyway, the damn things were too long, and we kept breaking camshafts because it was rotating too fast, and they were too long. Ruston, who developed the engines, could push them to V16 without too many problems, but V20 was we're pushing technology too far. Anyway, when those vessels get over 35 knots, it's called riding the hump. You get out of the water, the vessel actually lifts out of the water and planes across the top. So even if you've got waves, it's very smooth. If you lose one of the engines and drop below 35 knots, it's a pretty rough ride because the thing it drops back down into the water and it gets quite choppy. What happens then when it gets choppy? People get sick. Only takes one person to get sick, and then the smell sorts the rest of you out. Anyway, so what did we get wrong here? That's what dictates the service and the fast service. What did we get wrong here out of those four things? Systems and technology. We pushed it too far. What we should have done is put in one of those or four of those, and those things are gas turbine engines. So if we had to replace those marine diesel engines with gas turbine engines, it would have done the job. That's the next evolution of technology. Also, that Ramsgate port decision killed the revenue because we wanted to move it to Dover. Everybody knew where Dover was, but they moved it back to Ramsgate. So what would you do? Remember, you're burning 25 million now. What would you do to fix it? What? Move back to Dover. That's exactly what we did. I came back from New York and I said, right, enough of this. Get out of Ramsgate, get back into Dover. So we moved the UK operations back to Dover. Also, Dover was very happy to see us, and they reduced the port fees from about 20 million that we were paying in Ramsgate to about 12 million in Dover. Who would you joint venture with? If you're looking at your competitors here in Dover, who would you joint venture with for a task-based culture? Hover Speed, absolutely. Just the word speed in their name indicates it's fun. What's Hover Speed running? Does anybody know? Yeah, the old hovercraft. Those they were running these hovercraft, and they were at their end of their life. They're quite interesting things. You actually drive onto them on the land. When they start them up, that big rubber sheet around the bottom inflates, and they pop up on the land, and then they just zip straight off into the water. And they're carrying cars and passengers, but they were at their end of their life technologically, so they were very happy to see our vessels in there. And we reduced the 130 UK port staff to about 40. The culture was highly task-based, which suited us. The Belgian crew were further reduced to about 180, and that was the new livery, the Hover Speed livery on the vessel. We increased the revenue back up to about 220 million and got it back to break even within the year. So that's a bit about how to change it by revolution. Now let's have a quick look at a case study about how managers resist change. IBM and General Motors, all the management in that, it's like turning a Titanic around. They're resistant to change. They don't want to know about a new technology coming into the market. IBM was traditionally mainframes. They ignored personal computers for years until they started to really take hold. Same with General Motors. They ignored the fact that small cars were starting to dominate. So here's a case study. In 1879, George Eastman dropped out of high school and patented a plate coating machine. George established a dry plate coating company, the Dry Plate Coating Company, in 1881, and started manufacturing paper film. So the film originally was paper, and then in 85 he switched to celluloid. He provided the consumers with his first simple camera in 1888, and he tried to make this difficult photographic process very simple. Who are we talking about? Kodak. Kodak, absolutely. That was their original brand, Kodak, Eastman Kodak. He was quite successful. He had 100,000 pocket cameras, not that they fit into your pocket. He sold them for about $5 each by 1896. Then he developed the Brownie box camera in 1900. sold that for $1. Came up with the slogan, "You press the button and we do the rest." Yeah. In 1920, he then he converted silent movies into talking movies by putting soundtracks onto the film. And then he came up with colour photography in 1935, and that was slide-based colour photography, and then moved it into print-based colour photography in 1961. Now, a competitor, Edward Land, developed this, which was a camera that could do the film processing inside the camera. And it was the Polaroid instant camera. He patented that and also patented the chemical process inside. And the idea is you could take the picture, within a minute, you can produce a picture out of that. And that was the first attack on Kodak's film processing market by a substitute technology. In '65, this was actually one of the top selling cameras of all time. It was the Polaroid instant camera. Kodak then decided, let's start giving cameras away just to get people hooked on the development. So you'd have to take your film back to Kodak to go and get it developed. Stephen Sasson, an engineer at Kodak, invented the first digital camera. There's the digital camera. Note the cassette tape. That's where they stored the photos, on the cassette tape. So in '75, that's the world's first digital camera developed by Kodak. Although Kodak was the developer of the first digital camera, they didn't dare challenge their business model, which was based on selling cheap cameras and then selling film and photo prints for the lifetime of the customer. So they really wanted to hold on to that processing. In 1980, Kodak then also took that into the medical diagnostics area. Now, Fuji released the first commercial digital camera. That's the first commercially available digital camera in '88, and then Kodak followed about 3 years later with their DCS 100. Up until the '90s, Kodak had they dominated, basic monopoly on film. They had 90% of the film industry and 85% of the camera equipment industry. Kodak's film division, they were making 80% gross margins. They're ridiculous gross margins, wildly profitable. Digital photography then took off, and it was adopted. Within 5 years, there were 23 million households that had adopted the digital photography, that adopted that, and that reduced prices of digital cameras and also improved the image quality. The major attraction of digital cameras was that even the mugs that don't know how to take pictures could see what they've taken, delete them and have another go. So you could also capture short movies and you could edit your photos. So everybody looks a lot thinner, just on digital cameras because you can go and trim yourself down. Also, it got rid of the time and the cost of film processing. So that was removed, and you could send your photos via email. You could store them on your disk instead of having to buy a physical album to store the photos in. So I guess at this stage where Kodak should have listened, and companies that are highly successful, how much margin are they making here? 80%? Are they dominant? How much market share have they got? 95? Do they want to change? Absolutely not. Yeah, so they resist. They don't want to change, and the managers don't want to change. Anyway, the demand for traditional film processing declined quite rapidly. Kodak's management refused to give up 55% gross margin on their total business, so the camera equipment plus their film processing was about a 55% gross margin. The new digital business, the gross margins just on the equipment, remember you don't need to process anymore, so that's wiped out, that's around 25%. So let's have a look at the charts. That was Kodak's gross profit back from about 93 through to 2000. It's travelling up around the 55%, and when digital came in, there's a step change down to about 25. So do you think Kodak's interested in that? No, they resist. They want to hang on to their old way of doing business. Anyway, so you need to, in order to change, you need to say, hey, there's a declining profit margin and there's an emergence of a strong competitor. There certainly were. Kodak's traditional competitors were Fuji, Canon and Sony. Now HP and Nikon are there also. And then Kodak, instead of 85% in 2003, are number 2 with 18% of the digital camera market. Sony then was the market leader, so they were certainly in trouble. The company Kodak itself was built on chemistry and staffed by chemical engineers and manufacturing people. who had risen through the ranks. In '88, Kodak diversified. They thought, right, we've got chemists in the company, let's go and buy Sterling Drug, which is a pharmaceutical business, and apply our chemical expertise. Is that, would you say that's diversification? Yeah, that's pretty much diversification there, where you want to try to transfer your chemical expertise, new industry, new market, and new products. And they didn't quite have it. Let's have a look. They really didn't have it. They were in the manufacturing business in chemicals. They weren't in developing new drugs. So they had to spin off that company and get rid of it because it was diversification and it didn't work for them. Kodak then invested another $4 billion in digital research. In the 1990s, these things entered. That's the Kyocera. That was the first phone camera that came into the market. Again, another substitute technology, and Kodak wasn't ready for that. Kodak had invested in this, camera to printer direct technology. How do you print photos?
You don't.
You don't, yeah. They were hung up on trying to mount a camera in the top of a printer and then using the camera to control. Usually people will use the PC. You'll upload the photo to the PC and then you'll either go to a kiosk in an Officeworks or you'll have a colour printer at home and try to do it. Yeah. So they got that wrong. Kodak then tried to transform its from a traditional photographic company to the new digital age. The top management never quite grasped that the world was changing, and they thought everybody valued these hard prints. We obviously don't. We don't value the hard prints as much as they thought we did. And let's have a look at that. Remember I talked about the fluffy floor and management being disconnected with the market. They certainly weren't listening to their customers. They were, the top management were definitely disconnected. It remained a product-oriented company and defined itself as a film supplier. What it should have done is move to being customer-oriented as capturing photos or moments. They even came up with an advertising campaign of Kodak Moments, but they didn't listen to themselves. They were still thinking about manufacturing and being a film company. Digital cameras bypassed Kodak's film processing retail distribution network. I don't know if you remember 10 years ago, but there are all these little camera stores everywhere. Do you see them now? No. They're sold through electronics stores, aren't they? And Harvey Norman's and these big electronics retailers. So that rendered their distribution network obsolete. Also, they targeted women. In all of their advertising, you see a strong female focus because they had correctly identified the female in the family, the mother, is the archiver of family memories, and she was the one that used to do all the photographing. In the new digital age, it had moved from women to men as being a dominant purchaser of digital equipment. So they got that wrong as well. They tried to prolong the life of their existing technology by developing this, the photo CD. That's trying to develop a link with the old analog world and the new digital world, which is what a lot of companies try to do, hold on to their old technology. And that delays any serious commitment to going into the new digital age. What they should have done is invested in a number of little startups in Silicon Valley that are playing with photographs in the digital age and try to surround themselves like Google did with high innovation companies to try to keep alive. Who got it right? Let's have a look at Fuji, which was number 2 and only had a very small market share. Fuji developed this, which they implanted in all of these office automation stores, these little kiosks where you go and you download your photos into one of these things and then go and print. They got them into all the Walmart stores and they control about 40% of the photo finishing market, whereas Kodak's share was only 15%. Also Fuji, Xerox got into trouble and ran out of cash. Fuji had plenty of cash and they formed a joint venture and got into copying. Now, that's not really diversification. By doing Kodak tried to go and do the same thing and get into copying and take on Xerox. What Fuji did was that they joint ventured with Xerox and did product development rather than diversification. So they got it right. Also, Fuji applied their technology into chemicals and the industrial materials market and also the medical imaging market. In 2003, Kodak's CEO replaced all of the top management team with digital expertise. So I said hire and promote and develop a new culture, which is what they did, but it was a bit too late. Their digital share had fallen to about 7% by 2010. They reduced their workforce from 60,000 in 1980s down to 6,000 by 2011. They attempted to sell all of their patents in a multi-billion-dollar patent sale, and they also had to borrow some money to survive. If you look at their income statement, you can see since about 93 their revenue's been falling. There's their profit. It's going. It's falling markedly. There's actually their net profit's a net loss in the last years. If you look at their balance sheet, they actually go insolvent here. So their liabilities are higher than their assets, and they're in negative equity. And when you're insolvent, that's when you're bankrupt. And if you look at their cash flow, there's their profit, but on a cash basis from operating activities, it goes negative here. And whenever you see financing and investing activities going all over the place, the company's in trouble. It's selling off things, it's acquiring new companies, it doesn't work, it sells it off again. So that's a company in trouble. In 2012, they're in bankruptcy. And it's not like the market's disappeared. Digital photos are still around, and it's actually the market size has increased. It's just that we don't print them anymore. That's a case study about resistance to change. All right, let's call it a day there. Do you want to talk a bit about the exam? Yes. Was that no? Yes. Yes, okay.
How about you give us both? Why don't we even have an exam? Very tiny.
This one, yeah.
So let's have a think about this. What we've covered is we've done the business plan, the product, the strategy, marketing. So we've done all of those, and even if you went on to do an MBA later in your life, we've covered those pretty well. So I don't think you're going to learn too much new if you did an MBA later in marketing or strategy. In execution, we only did communications. That's all I'm going to examine. Usually in execution, I'll cover selling and also negotiation, but we missed, I think it was Easter Monday or something like that. So it's just communications that I'll cover in the exam on that way. Operations, we didn't do in this subject, and neither did we do finance. And personnel, we covered reasonably well too. So let's have a look at what we've done. This is modelled on the MIT course. It's for engineers and scientists and technical people just before they get out into the real world, and they do almost a mini MBA. It's modelled on a small MBA, and we've done quite a few things that they think there's not too much to examine. We've hit 89 case studies and almost 260 theories. There's plenty of things to look at and examine. So let's do a few questions. It's 40 multiple choice questions. There are no short answer questions. Yeah, 40 multiple choice questions. Look, unless you want some short answer questions. If there's anybody that wants to, email me, yeah, and I can set a different exam for you. Yeah. But otherwise, no, I'm serious, yeah, because I did promise you'd have 3 short answer questions, but it's just going to be 40 straight multiple choice. Now, I don't do any negative marking, so there's always one correct answer. If you get it wrong, I don't take any marks off, so that means you can guess. Okay. Now let's have a look, and the questions are fairly straightforward. Which statement about a necessity entrepreneur is incorrect? This was the first lecture that we did. Necessity entrepreneur, there was 2. There was an opportunistic entrepreneur and a necessity one. Necessity one does it out of necessity, otherwise they starve. It's usually somebody that sets up a little retail store or a stand or a tradie, doing something like that. Which one do you think for that one? Which one's incorrect? Second, yeah. Business services and high tech, that's usually the opportunistic entrepreneur, so that would be incorrect. And by the way, when I used to write questions, I always used to write them negatively. Now I write them positively because that's a bit confusing. The major cause of business failure is
Second one.
lack of business planning and inadequate market research. That's usually the major cause. Yeah. Which question does not, again, it's a negative question, I don't do that anymore. Which question does not form part of the mission statement? How do we reach our customers? That's all about advertising and promotion. Solving the customer's needs, what are the customer's needs, who are the customers, that's all in the mission statement. Which is not true in the following statements. Objectives, which is the ends, if you like, the goals or... Yeah, revealing means to ends, that's the strategy, isn't it? The direction, how to get there. The rest is all about the objectives or the goals or the ends themselves. Which is the most appropriate form of funding for a company to pursue at the incubation stage of a company's development? Oh, you haven't. You can't see the bottom, can you?
Yeah.
The correct answer is founders, families, and friends rather than the others. The triple F rule: fools, fools, and fools. So that is the answer on that one. You can't see that, can you? So anyway, which is the most hazardous opportunity to pursue here? That's the ANSOP matrix, that square matrix. Which one? Diversification, yeah. Unknown customers, unknown products, yeah. Which is not true of the top 10 strategic technologies. Remember I did almost in the first lecture 10 strategic technologies and 10 current technologies? Or 10 current opportunities? Which one? Which one? Which one's existing? Yeah, the internet was the one that was existing there. Again, you need to do a bit of study for this. The sources of secondary research are trade associations, focus groups, reverse engineering, or customer surveys is the last one. Primary research was all about getting in touch with people, and which one can be done from the desk? No, it's trade associations for that one, because they publish all their data on the web, so that's desk research. Which statement about patents isn't true? They do expire after 20 years, but you think that's untrue? A patent expires after 20 years.
That's true.
But you reckon that's the problem? Because I do too. It's not the after 20 years that's the problem. Worldwide is the problem. You have to patent in every country. So that's a bit of a tricky one, that. Copyright protects which forms of intellectual property?
Films, music, drawing, research, reports, design.
Well, hang on, what are phrases? That's trademark, isn't it? So that's gone. Broadcast, music, drawings, designs are designs, right? So that's gone. Methods, processes, that's a patent. Films, music, drawing, research reports, it's got to be the last one. That's copyright. Which statement is not true about mass marketers? These are the big companies, the big distribution companies that scale everything and take everything to the market. Remember we compared mass marketers and innovative companies, small ones? Second one, flexible? Yeah, they're the innovative companies, the second one. Which is the most important element of a direct response piece of advertising? 80% of it. Headline, yep. There are 3 market testing activities. Market testing is all about trying to figure out, is it priced correctly? How do we promote the product? How do we distribute it? Try to find those things. Versus product testing, which is how the customer uses the product. Did I answer that question actually? Yeah, I didn't I? Understand how they used it, the product is that one. 14, you didn't do this, but see if you can get it anyway. This is in selling. Which is the best closing technique for the Jung personality type with a task-based characteristic? We didn't do this, but I bet you can get it. What's task-based? Are they very fast,
Straight to the point.
direct?
Straight to the point.
Yeah, direct close. Don't muck around, direct close. People who tend to look to the side when they're thinking about the past, what are they? Which ones? Auditory, yeah, they look to their ears, to the side, auditory. You didn't do this, but we can get it anyway. What is the best negotiating tactic for handling extreme demand from the other side? We didn't do this, but have a go.
The second one.
Which one?
I'd say the second.
You didn't do it, so it's the first one. Yeah. What type of wholesaler will be used to distribute loaves of bread and to independent restaurants? They run around and deliver to all the small stores. Which one? You need to do some study, guys. Truck wholesaler, yep. When profiling a person for a role in a company, which best describes the match between the occupation and the personality profile characteristics? First one? Yeah, number 1 looks good. Line manager is a task-based person and also the inventor is a visionary. Okay, here's a break-even. I usually put a break-even in. A company sold 50,000 tins of paint with a contribution margin of 20%. The cost structure of the company was $10 per tin for the cost of goods, $2 per tin for sale, that's variable cost. Fixed cost is $360,000. What's the break-even revenue for the company? This is where you roll up your sleeves and say, break-even analysis, look at the formula and say, right, fixed cost 360K, contribution margins 20%, 360K divided by 20% is what? That's 1.8, isn't it? Let's have a look. Yeah. 1.8 million. Most of my calculation questions you can do in your head. 2008's crash in the stock market that was driven by these things. So classify, this is the pest analysis or the environment analysis. What's easy access to debt? Is that would be economic, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that narrows it down to those two. A lack of governance in the banking system, that's more regulatory, isn't it? It's got to be that one, hasn't it? Global connectivity, that's technology, yeah. So sometimes you just relax and you can work these things in. Look, if all else fails, yes. So that's how you fill out the form, okay? What's wrong with this form? Because that's all I want. I don't want all your other scratchy, just want that form filled out. 40 multiple choice questions. What's wrong with this form? Sorry?
Smith and John have two spaces.
No, space is okay. That'll be fine.
But he didn't mark that as space.
Sorry?
Second one.
I mean, I can mark the space if you want. Yeah, that's not the problem. That's not the problem, honestly. Anything else? He's guessing the same answers? No, that's what I just did. In fact, that's what a lot of students do. What else? Anything else there, people?
There's 150 something questions.
Sorry, there's what?
There's 150 something questions.
You've got it, absolutely, yeah? See, he starts at 121. Turn the fucking thing over and start marking for question 1. Look, if you don't, I'll publish your name. You know I've got a CRM system. Everybody will find out. Because that means you get 0, okay? So turn it over. What's wrong with that? All right, so pay attention here. Take a pencil along. Pencil's good. Don't do that. There's only one answer. The computer will not mark that. So don't do that. And don't scratch around. Make sure that that's gone. Otherwise the computer won't mark that as well. I'm not going to see it. The computer will. So really, yeah? What's wrong with that?
No answer.
No answer at all. I'll publish your name on that too. Yeah? You've just blown off 25% of chance getting it right. And what's wrong with this?
There's no feedback.
And I do this regularly. Okay, so don't do that. Anyway, 40 multiple choice questions. As I said, look, remember what did I say? If you have a cold on the day and don't want to turn up?
Sure.
Yeah. Even if you lose a couple of limbs, stick the pen in your mouth and mark the thing. Yeah. Otherwise, the supplementary is 6 short answer questions. Yeah.
All the questions taken from the practice ones on Amtrak.
I write new ones every year, but it's damn good practice. Yeah. Now, 6 short answer questions. Only one guy got 100%. The rest have failed, but he really knew the subject very well. So please turn up on the day, and each question's worth 0.75 marks out of 30. Good luck. Good luck with your careers, and see you all next semester.
Do we have to pass the exam?
No, for the whole subject, 50%.
Each week, we just need
Oh, wrong one. Oh, the other one. Other one? Thanks.
So it's 40%. Yeah.